Hello, this is Jonathan Fayard with Aptora, and today I'm going to cover a bit on mobile work orders. So these would be work orders that would be received by the technician out in the field on their smartphone or tablet. So first I'm going to say that a customer's calling in and they need us to come out and do some service work. They have, say, a clogged sink or something like that. So we're a plumbing company, they call in, need us to service them clogged sink. So I'd go to my workflow navigator, and I would go to my customer list first so that I can look up my customer. So I clicked on this right here. It brought this customer job list up, and then I search for the customer. I'm going to do it by name, and we're going to say that it is Jonathan's Eatery. So all I got to do then is just do actions and do create work order. Now that's one way to do it right there, once you find the customer using the customer job list. Now another way is I could have, right off the workflow navigator, since it shows me a typical flow of taking care of a customer, notice this one right here, you could have just said add work order like this, and it would bring up a blank work order, and then you would choose the customer job, and I could have typed in the first few letters of the customer here, like Jon, and then there's Jonathan's Eatery. So I could have did it this way. And then it populates their address and work address and all of their equipment information for me to get started. And another way in which I actually prefer to do it in the software is when I use the customer job list, I will right click the customer's profile name, and I will click on the history button. So the reason why I like the history going here is because now I can go into anything that the customer might ask me, be it any sales history, any work order history, I can see any previous sales opportunities. So usually before I answer the phone, I'll already know, if I already know who the customer is based off their phone number, if we're using caller ID, then I'll immediately go into their history. Now when you're on the phone with the customer, if they want you to do a work order, now you just go to the work order tab right here, and you can right click and say new work order. And then now you're ready to get started. And from here, since we're going to say clog sink. And also when you're on this address tab, by the way, you probably want to verify that the bill to address and work address is still correct. So that gives you a chance to update the customer's profile if you needed to. So here we got the brief description, clog sink. Detailed description could be like downstairs sink in the kitchen. And then work order type, we could do clog sink right there for work order type. And for assign to, let's say we don't know who we're going to assign it to yet, because we don't know who's going to be free that day, but we will shortly when we look at our dispatch board. So then for the day, let's do March 14th. And for the start time, we're going to leave that as blank, but we're going to say that we can do a PM time slot promise to the customer. And we're going to leave the callback blank because this is not a callback work order. And then for the notes, we're going to put in something like private notes, collect money up front. And this would be notes that the customer can never see, but the technician will be able to see. And then the technician notes would be notes that the technician fills out in the field. And then on the additional info tab, we'll put the priority as medium. And we're going to leave the service agreement alone because they're not a service agreement holder, but if they were, we could select that from any other service agreements that they have. We're going to say this is the service department. And then for the equipment, this customer has this sink right here, so we're going to select that. If we were going to be working on something else there, we could create equipment. And the reason why you would want to create equipment either here or while you're out in the field, have the technician do it for you, is because then you have history on all of that equipment. I could go into this equipment, look at every work order that we've done on it, every sale that's related to it. And our software can also, you can put equipment on an equipment watch list for if equipment's being constantly faulty, so that you know it's on your watch list, something to be alert of. And it's also great for, well, the equipment history will keep track of how old the equipment is, so install dates, manufacture dates, so that you can run reports on equipment such as, say, a heat and air conditioning company. When equipment gets 12 years or older, it's more likely to fail and break down, so the customer would need to purchase new equipment. So if you run a report and you see, here's all our list of customers with equipment 12 years or older, we might want to go ahead and do marketing to them and talk to them about rebates that they can get for getting higher efficiency equipment. So it can be used for things like that. And then payment info, I would change the net 30 days, which is their default, to due on receipt. And then for the items, I'm just going to leave that alone, but these are items that we could charge the customer. So if I was in the office, I could put in something like a trip charge here for $75 for going out there, but I'm just going to have the technician do it, because the tech can do all that out in the field. And then the company assets would be assets that we assign to the work order, like a genie lift or a pipe threading machine. And I'm not going to assign any assets to this job because we're just unclogging a kitchen sink. But if I were to assign equipment to it, then that would alert someone else if they tried to assign that piece of equipment on my job to another job, because it would alert them that they were trying to double book equipment. So now that the work order is created, I just hit save and close, and it adds it to my equipment list as work order 1518 with the type clogged sink. So now I will just go into my dispatch board so that we can assign it to the proper technician. Alright, so now that we're done creating our work order, we need to go ahead and dispatch it. So I'm going to pull up the dispatch board, which was over on my other monitor in full screen, but you can't see that monitor, so I had to pull it over from one screen to the other. But here is that work order as an unscheduled work order over here. The status is not scheduled, so anything not scheduled is going to be over here. Anything scheduled is going to be over here. And I have the day set for March 14th because that was what the start date for this work order is here. Notice that it's not assigned to anyone yet though, so that's why it's unscheduled, and it doesn't have a start time. But remember earlier I put in a time slot promised being PM, so that is where this PM comes in. So this lets me know as the dispatcher that this is for March 14th. We promised it in the PM. I now see who is available. It looks like everyone except Bill already has a scheduled work order, but Bill is free in the afternoon starting at around 2 p.m. So I can go ahead and now drag this work order over here, and now we have the work order scheduled to Bill. I can see here that the priority is medium because of the blue wrench. I can see by the red ribbon on the left hand side that it is a clogged sink work order. And then I can also see that it is a scheduled status now because of the light blue background. So now that is completed. What's going to happen is on the day of the work order, Bill is going to have it in his mobile device. So here's mobile, and if they were viewing it on a phone, it's going to look something like this. If it's on a tablet, it's going to look something like this. But you can also use mobile on a laptop or computer through your browser, so that is another option. And then here we can see, here's the work order because I'm logged in as Bill. If I scroll down, it says hello Bill. You have 10 alerts, and the alerts are pop-up alerts that you get in the software. So you actually can get push notifications just like you would when you receive a text message and you look at your phone and it says you got a text. Well, you're able to see that you got a work order just like you would if you got a text message from somebody. So when he goes now into my work orders, he can see that he has Jerry Lee's grocery store number 1 right here. And the reason why that one is there is because that's the first work order for the day that he has scheduled right here. So that's his work order right there. The reason why he's not seeing all 3 work orders in here is because I have a preference turned on that you can turn off if you want to, that only allows him to see 1 work order at a time. And a lot of my customers prefer that setting's turned on, because if the technician, if he sees too many work orders, he'll feel overwhelmed, and if he sees not enough work orders, then he might drag his feet, knowing that he doesn't have to work that fast a day because he only has, say, like 2 work orders. So I want to get to this work order down here. So we're going to pretend like it's later in the day and Mr. Bill T. Riker has already gone into his work orders and he had completed them throughout the day. So he completed this one, and then he had went into his other work order and he had completed this one as well. So we're going to complete both of those work orders. So now on the dispatch board, and the dispatch board refreshes every minute, but I can refresh it manually right here. So now it shows me that these 2 work orders are completed. It says completed at the top, and when I hover over it, it shows me status completed, and it also grays them out to let me know that. So now we are up to the work order that we created earlier for Bill for the clog sink. So now we're going to go back into mobile, Bill's mobile, and now when Bill goes into my work orders, there is that work order, Jonathan's Eatery. So we're going to go ahead and open that, and now Bill is going to be able to see everything that the office had put in for him earlier when they had scheduled this and created the work order. He's going to be able to see that it is a clog sink that he's going to be having to do. He can see the duration, the Bill 2 address, the work address, and these are links. So when he presses his finger on his screen, that's going to route him to the job site, so he knows how to get there. If he needs to call the customer for whatever reason, he can press this with his finger. It'll go ahead and call the customer. He'll be able to see the detailed description. It is downstairs sink in the kitchen that he needs to unclog, and he sees the private notes that says collect money up front. He can go in here and look at the general, so he can see that it is a medium priority. It is a due on receipt, and this is not a callback. And then he can see that the office has not put in any items for him, so he can go ahead and do that now. So let's go ahead and put in a trip charge, and then let's also put in a unclogging a grease trap. So we'll just say that the unclogging a grease trap is for unclogging a sink, because I do not have one in the software for unclogging a sink, but this one will do just fine. All right. But if you wanted to go in and create one for an unclogging a sink, you could. Basically what I did for this grease trap right here, and I might as well show it real fast, it wouldn't take that very long, but all I had to do for doing that was I went into lists, invoice items, and here's the one called unclogging a grease trap. So what I could do if I wanted to have this in the future is just go new item, and I can just say I could do a group item, unclogging a sink. We could do category plumbing, unclogging a sink, and for the groups we could put in a trip charge, and then I could put in the amount of labor, and there we go. So now we would have that in there. And as easy as that. So back to Bill's mobile device. He can now go in and look at the sink here. That is the equipment that he's working on. That's what the office had selected for him. If they had not, he could have selected equipment while he's out there. He can also add equipment to the system. And if he needs to document link anything or look at any documents attached to this customer's profile from the office, he can. So if he needs to take a picture of anything and document link it to the work order, he can do that as well. Now that he has done all those things, he is ready to drive to the customer's location. So he would hit the en route button to start a timesheet entry. And it is now doing a stopwatch. So back in the office, if we open up what the office is going to see, here is that timesheet entry that has been put in. It's showing Mr. Bill T. Riker, his start time was at 1:50 p.m. and he hasn't had a stop time yet for being en route. But on his mobile device, as soon as he hits the stop, it would stop that. But actually the next step that he would want to do is go ahead and hit working once he gets there, because that's going to automatically stop the en route stopwatch and start up the now working stopwatch. So now as he's doing his job and he completes it, he will then go ahead and hit the stop button to stop the timesheet. So now when we go back to Total Office Manager and we refresh, we can see here his start and stop time for en route and his start and stop time for working. And then going back to mobile. Now that he has completed the job because he had hit the stop button on working, he can then go in and do a print preview for the customer so that they can see what the cost would be, or he could have done that earlier. It depends on your business. Some of my customers like to have their customers sign off on the work order before they do work. Some don't get sign-offs on work orders and they just do the work and then charge the customer after the fact. It's up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and create an invoice now, and it's going to say, do you want to mark the work order as completed, and do you want to include the items on the work order onto the invoice? And I'm going to say yes to both. And it says that a mobile invoice has been created. Now what this means is in Total Office Manager, if I go to my lists and I go to my invoice, sales, credit, and estimate list, now I have a filter right here that I had selected earlier called mobile invoices. So here's all the invoices that we have, estimates and invoices, but I'm only interested in seeing mobile invoices. So I'm saying that the person in the office right now who is doing this is charged with making sure that the technicians are invoicing correctly out in the field. So here we can see Jonathan's Eatery. We would open this, verify that Mr. Bill T. Riker did the invoicing properly, and then we would save and close it. And when we save and close it, then it will no longer be a mobile invoice type. It'll change to a Total Office Manager invoice type, and that lets everybody in the office know that it was verified, and it'll let you know who verified that the invoice was done correctly. So on the mobile invoice now, all Mr. Bill T. Riker would have to do is go in here, edit anything if you still needed to edit, add any items if you still needed to add items, and then he could just go ahead and if everything looks good, he could take a payment, but he of course would capture a signature, and he could also do the print preview to show the customer this is what your total charge will be. The customer says that's fine, I'm ready to go ahead and pay. So then the customer, let's say they wanted to take a cash payment, credit card, or a check. You can do any of those. You could do $50 in cash and the rest on a credit card. There's not a problem doing that. We're just going to say that for this $250, we're going to do it as cash. And we're going to say save. Payment has been applied to the invoice. And now you can see that the amount due is $0 and the payment was cash, $250. Now we would just go in and send an email to send the customer their receipt, and it would be blind carbon copied back to the office so that we would have a record just in case the customer says, I never got your email, I never got the receipt. We can go and see if it came to us and say, well, we got it because the receipt gets copied back to us. So you might want to check your spam filter or something like that because we did send it to you, but not a problem. We'll go ahead and send it to you again. All right. And that's pretty much it. It's not very hard for a technician to be able to use this. All of these buttons here, you can turn on or off whatever you want. You don't have to have this many options for the technician, but all the power in mobile is there if you need it, if a technician wants it. But of course, it seems like the most important thing to my customers is the work orders, the technician going into the work order. And no work orders are in here right now for Bill because he's completed all his work orders for the day. But you can put in another preference to have him be able to see the first work order of the next day with the start time, so he knows what time do I start today, the next day, tomorrow morning, where do I go. So there is that. But one thing that I didn't talk about was really the power of mobile, in that they can go in and look at the history of the customer, everything in the customer's profile. They can even look at, how do I pronounce the customer's first and last name? What are all the contact logs notes that we have with this customer? Do we have any kind of complaints ever logged with this customer? Is this a problem customer? Things like that. So all of that is meant to help your technicians provide better customer service to your customers.